like the way humans consume information, still not fully encapsulated in the web. Today, things exist in very different ways, right? You have web pages, you have YouTube, etc. But over time, I hope the web is much more multimodal. It's much more richer, much more interactive. It is a lot more stateful, which it's not today.
So just a year ago, Google CEO Sundar Pichai gave a practical assessment on the state of the web back then. He also expected that multimodal web platforms would soon be available. And then these happened.
Perplexity rolling out its AI browser Comet to all users this week.
Unfortunately, Arc is still the best browser.
It is the best browser.
I hate every time I say it, it sounds worse because it's even more and more out of date, but Arc is still the best browser.
It is.
Good morning. Today, we're going to launch ChatGPT Atlas, our new web browser. This is an AI-powered web browser built around ChatGPT.
Artificial intelligence company OpenAI is diving into the web browser space with a direct challenge to Google Chrome.
Browser wars are back.
Yeah, the browser wars are so back. To ground this in reality, let's see what the ChatGPT Atlas browser can do using a quick real-world test from Patrick Bet-David and Tom Ellsworth. Watch this.
Okay, Rob, can you show us what it looks like? If you want to just go to ChatGPT and show us what it looks like, the Atlas. So I think you just did it. So that's what it looks like.
Yep.
Okay, can you just play around with it and let's just see what we know. Just do anything and let's see if it's anything different than what Google does. What is the latest on the
government shutdown?
Yeah. Okay, great. Oh, so it's like a ChatGPT. Oh, got it. So first the stories come up.
So up here you have your links, so you can go and search through the news articles that it's posting. But here it gives you the ChatGPT feature, where it's all the information that you would get if you would just plug that same question into ChatGPT.
So Google, now let's do the same thing, Rob. Go back, copy paste your question that you did, and just do it on Google. What's the latest with government shutdown? And let's see what the experience is with Google. Oh. So all it does is gives you the links, go a little bit lower. Yeah, Google's going to get destroyed. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Hey,
that's
what's the difference? What's the first?
Are you kidding me?
No summary.
Are you kidding me? Go back to ChatGPT, the Atlas one. So on Atlas, I not only get the links, but it tells me, like, zoom in a little bit so I can read that.
Gives you the quick summary.
Yeah, here's a summary of what's going on. The shutdown began at 12:01, October 6th, on following it has been stretched to 22 days, second largest history, major sticking points, congressional. It's roughly 900,000 federal workers. So now go to Google. Why would I go to Google? By the way, this is scary.
Yeah, it goes quite the same with other top AI browsers. They've been shocking recently. But how can they actually cook a giant like Google? More than 50% of Google's revenue comes from search advertising, and that's where the problem is. Watch this.
If you look back at the history of Google, Google took off with AdSense. AdSense, like, 03, 04, like we're now 20 years into this. AdSense was huge, and people are buying keywords. I mean, from our industry, Pat, remember the most expensive keyword? And
insurance.
Insurance.
$52.
Exactly. $52 just for insurance. So now the question people are asking is, okay, well, where's the ad layer going to come? Is there a new ad layer coming? Because people go to AI because they want this, they hope, kind of a neutral, objective summary of what's going on and to understand things. Well, now is the ad layer going to move, and does this basically just take keywords out? Because suddenly keywords is what you actually are searching for, but when you use AI, it's intent and conversation. Oh, I know what you mean. I'll get it for you. I know what you mean. And they even sometimes it'll rephrase your prompt. If this is what you meant, then here, I got this for you. Whereas Google keywords, remember the days of you would just retype it. You were the AI engine because you had to keep refining your prompt. I think this is pretty big, and ChatGPT is right now the reigning king of AI. I use all four of them. I use Perplexity, I use Gemini, I use ChatGPT, and I also use Julius, and I've got pro-level subscriptions to all of them, and I correlate them. I look back and forth on stuff when I do research. But I think this is pretty significant, and the Bing on Google that we saw in the stock market is right in the heart of AdSense, because the market is saying, really, Google? What are you going to do about AdSense? You've been getting paid for keywords. What if it goes this way?
So 57% of their Google's revenue comes from search results, like from
that's
searching something online.
That's $46 billion.
Wow.
Yeah,
AdSense.
Yeah, and $8.1 billion comes from YouTube. 4 billion comes from their Google Ad Network. 8.7 comes from Pixel. 9.6 comes from Cloud. But 57 is coming from ads, and Atlas is about to take that away from them.
Sure, Google's throne looks threatened. In reality, they planned for this long ago. That's why they're still leading the field, slow but steady. Watch this.
What do you think is going to happen with the web? Because obviously the web is so important to Google.
Yeah.
I had an editor that told me, he was like, oh, you're going to speak with Demis? Ask him what happens when we stop clicking, right?
Yeah.
We're clicking through the web at all times, the rich corpus of websites that we use. If we're all just dialoguing with AI, then maybe we don't click anymore. So what is your scenario plan for what happens to the web?
Well, look, I think there's going to be a very interesting phase in the next few years on the web and the way we interact with websites and apps and so on. If everything becomes more agent based, then I think we're going to want our assistants and our agents to do a lot of the work and a lot of the mundane work that we currently do, right? Fill in forms, make payments, book tables, this kind of thing. So, I think that we're going to end up with probably a kind of economics model where agents talk to other agents and negotiate things between themselves and then give you back the results, right? And you'll have the service providers with agents as well that are offering services, and maybe there's some bidding and cost and things like that involved, and efficiency. And then I hope from the user perspective, you have this assistant that's super capable that you can, just like a brilliant a human assistant, personal assistant, and can take care of a lot of the mundane things for you. And I think if you follow that through, that does imply a lot of changes to the structure of the web and the way we currently use it.
It's a lot of middlemen.
Yeah, sure. But there will be I think there'll be incredible other opportunities that will appear, economic and otherwise, based on this change. But I think it's going to be a big disruption.
You can have AI give a lot of context, but one of our important design goals, though, is when you come to Google search, you're going to get a lot of context, but you're going to go and find a lot of things out on the web. So that will be true in AI mode, in AI overviews, and so on. But I think to our earlier conversation, we are still giving you access to links, but think of the AI as a layer which is giving you context, summary. Maybe in AI mode, you can have a dialogue with it back and forth on your journey, right? But through it all, you're kind of learning what's out there in the world. So those core principles don't change. But I think AI mode allows us to push we have our best models there, right? Models which are using search as a deep tool. Really, for every query you're asking, kind of fanning out, doing multiple searches, like kind of assembling that knowledge in a way so you can go and consume what you want to, right? And that's how we think about it.
I got a chance to listen to a bunch of Liz Reed describe this. Two things stood out to me that she mentioned. One thing is what you were talking about is the query fan out, which I didn't even think about before. Is the powerful aspect of integrating a bunch of stuff on the web for you in one place. So yes, it provides that context so that you can decide which page to then go on to. The other really, really big thing speaks to the earlier, in terms of productivity multiplier that we're talking about, that she mentioned, was language. So one of the things you don't quite understand is through AI mode, you make, for non-English speakers, you make sort of, let's say, English language websites accessible in the reasoning process as you try to figure out what you're looking for. Of course, once you show up to a page, you can use a basic translate.
Yeah.
But that process of figuring it out, if you empathize with a large part of the world that doesn't speak English, their web is much smaller in that original language. And so it unlocks that huge cognitive capacity there. That we don't, you take for granted here with all the bloggers and the journalists writing about AI mode. You forget that this now unlocks, because Gemini is really good at translation.
No, it is. I mean, the multimodality, the translation, its ability to reason, we are dramatically improving tool use. So putting that power in the flow of search, I think, look, I'm super excited with AI overviews. We've seen the product has gotten much better. We measure it using all kinds of user metrics. It's obviously driven strong growth of the product. And we've been testing AI mode. It's now in the hands of millions of people, and the early metrics are very encouraging. So, look, I'm excited about this next chapter of search.
Do you see a trajectory in the possible future where AI mode completely replaces the 10 blue links plus AI overview?
Our current plan is AI mode is going to be there as a separate tab for people who really want to experience that. But it's not yet at the level where our main search page is. But as features work, we'll keep migrating it to the main page. And so you can view it as a continuum. AI mode will offer you the bleeding edge experience, but things that work will keep overflowing to AI overviews and the main experience.
And the idea that AI mode will still take you to the web, to the human-created web.
Yes, that's going to be a core design principle for us.
So Google foresaw this battle coming and already mapped a clear strategy to stay on top as new AI browsers emerged. Overall, having a web browser that acts like a virtual assistant is exciting, but the convenience always comes with some downsides. Let's unveil those with the AI experts. Watch this.
I think where it gets tricky is where the agent is taking some kind of action on your behalf that might involve a transaction or just anything that might expose your personal information, right? Like, are you entering a password? Are you entering your banking information? Would it be possible for some prompt injection to steal that information and route it to a hacker? That's what we got to be careful of.
Okay, so that's one security issue with these things. There's also just the privacy issue of you are giving your browsing data to an AI company. And Casey, that makes me nervous. Does that make you nervous?
Yeah, absolutely. Web browsing is highly personal, and people do a lot of intimate searching in the same way that they have a lot of really intimate chats with ChatGPT. So yeah, if you were able to take every website that I visited in the past 30 days, you could build a very robust picture of who I am. Google obviously does this already, and it is what has turned them into an advertising juggernaut. We know that OpenAI has aspirations to become an advertising juggernaut of its own. But think about when a federal prosecutor decides that you may be guilty of a crime, and now they want to see your ChatGPT account.
I have an alibi.
Well, that's good to hear. But in addition to having, your sort of stored ChatGPT memories and everything it knows about you from your chats, now there's also the attached browsing history and all the conversations you've been having with your tabs. So yeah, this is just becoming a ton of personal data. And this is the flip side of a highly personalized service. Is if it is highly personalized, it can be really useful to you, but it also becomes a really rich target for attackers, for law enforcement, and the list goes on.
Well, and it makes me think there are additional risks because, as we now know, ChatGPT is integrating with all of these services and sharing some user data with these services, which would include things like memories or context about you, which might be derived in part from this browsing data on ChatGPT Atlas. So all of this starts to feel like a kind of a massive land grab for data, not just about how users are interacting with the internet, but what those users are interacting with.
Yeah, and I think we just still do not have a great sense of, I know that there is a written privacy policy for Atlas. I know that sort of things exist, but, per our earlier discussion, OpenAI is also a company that is rushing things out and has not always thought a lot in advance about what guardrails should be up there. So I do think that we should put this in the true, buyer beware experimental category. If you are a person with a high risk tolerance and a problematic dependence on ChatGPT, then you may want to explore Atlas.
Yeah.
But, maybe don't put all your banking information into it just yet.
Yeah. I would say if you're out there and you're an early adopter and you like to see see around the corner, I have found it actually quite fun to use this AI-powered web browser. I'm using Perplexity Comet. But when I started using this, you were like, dude, you are living on the edge.
Yeah.
And to that I said, well, I don't do any extreme sports, and otherwise I live a very boring life, so let me live. But I think
You do extreme browsing.
I do extreme browsing. And I think it's, experiment with these things. They can save you some time, especially if you're a person who spends a lot of time reading long documents that you want summarized for you. But be careful before you let it log into websites and buy things for you and use your bank account and stuff.
I'm not going to care what browser I use. I'm just going to be able to have a conversation conversation with my AI, and it will pull up the data from wherever it is, whether it's using superintelligence from, OpenAI or Google.
Well, the only thing I'd add to that is that very, very soon that data will be your personal health data, your personal preferences, your everything about your soul. And then when you have your virtual girlfriend or boyfriend, everything you like and don't like in life will be in there. So if Sam wins the data aggregation race, if he falls behind for a month or a year in the AI race, he still has your data. And that personalization might create a much more compelling experience, allow him to catch up again. So the personal data warfare is like kicking off in a huge way right now. You mentioned it a second ago, Peter.
What's the downside of what we see here with Atlas? I mean, we have the ability of OpenAI to not only look at the data you have on your browser, but probably every tab that you have open and everything you have going on in your computer. And they're not promising to keep it confidential. Thoughts on that, Alex?
I think we'll see forcing functions for greater forms of confidentiality and privacy. But I'm just reminded, do you remember the browser wars?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Right.
And Google won with 70% market share today.
Yeah.
Right. So there's sort of a long history of sleepy periods of relatively low innovation separated by Cambrian explosions of functionality. I remember all of the browser wars, and I think a browser war today over competing among other factors on whose browser is most private while also being AI agentic, I think that's a valid front for competition, and I welcome the competition.
Overall, AI browsers are coming not just as a smarter Chrome, but as systems that study you. Every scroll, pause, hesitation, every tab you leave open but never click. They'll learn the patterns behind your thoughts and start predicting your next one before you have it. At first, it'll feel convenient with fewer clicks, faster answers, and cleaner pages. But behind that convenience is a quiet trade. You stop searching, and the browser starts deciding. It will tell you what's relevant, what's trustworthy, and what's safe. That's when the old web dies. The internet stops being a place you explore and becomes a mirror that only shows you what your reflection algorithm approves of. And the strangest part? Most people will think it's made things easier. You won't browse the web anymore. You will just get a tour of the parts it thinks are your thing. And that's worrying. Well, let's see how it goes this time.